6 months ago, I quit my toxic Korean corporate job. And then last month, I traveled to Seoul, Korea. And what I found there was not at all what I expected. I had always been interested in Korean history, especially in how one people could be split up right down the middle and end up in two completely toxic extremes of ideology. One, an isolated dystopia of mass control and dictatorship. The other, a colorful and culturally rich utopia secretly crumbling under the pressure of its own giant reputation. So is it true? The myth of the toxic work culture, the high suicide rates, and the fastest declining birth rate in the world? Or is there more to the story? More resilience, unity, and conviction when you take a closer look? My very first day landing in Korea, I encountered the very thing I spent 20 hours and $1,000 to get away from: the American flag. At this point in time, I had zero context for what was going on, but I made a wild guess that this crowd leaned a little to the right, if you catch my drift. Well, I went on my way to check out the Gyeongbokgung Palace, which was gorgeous. Ironically, though, what I found at the museum there were prideful displays of how much Western culture had influenced Korean designs over the years. This was my second hint that North Korea might be onto something when it came to their concept of imperial brainwashing going on south of their border. Maybe. Might. Don't take my word for it. But the most intriguing part of my first day was, as I was leaving the museum and twilight cast overhead, I could hear the resounding echo of a crowd right outside the walls. I rushed to leave the palace, feeling like I was literally a servant in the palace during the empire, rushing to the gate to see the peasant crowd at the emperor's doorstep, ready to have his head. And that is kind of exactly what was happening. Let me explain. When I came outside, I was met with protesters, but these ones were different. The crowd was larger, more organized, and without any American flags. Finally, I bit the bullet and asked ChatGPT what the hell was going on. Turns out they were calling for the president's impeachment, and the crowd I had ran into earlier, you know the one, were against the impeachment of a corrupt politician. The American guarantee: wherever our flag goes, stupidity follows. Anyway, I was especially interested in a smaller rally taking place just on the next cross street by the palace. It was pro-impeachment as well, but its flags were more interesting to me. There were pride flags and trans flags. Another myth I had always heard of was that Korean culture was not particularly accepting of LGBTQ people. As a lesbian, I can't say that it is not true. My Korean company is the only place I ever worked in New York where I did not feel comfortable being too open about my sexuality, or at least I had to be selective about who. And so, knowing firsthand how things can be, it made me happy to see the flags and the protests, even if it was in a small corner of its own. After this, I headed over to Hanok Village, but it was too dark and Naver Maps was messing with me, and I hadn't slept since I landed from Thailand at 7 a.m. and my check-in had been delayed till 11 a.m. and I sat on the sidewalk and cried, okay? Don't judge me. But while I was crying on the floor, the American flag protesters literally came marching right by me. I wish I'd vlogged it. It was so funny in hindsight. Anyway, I picked myself up and headed to my next and last destination for the night, Itaewon. As I've said, and I'm sure you've noticed by now, Korean history and politics has interested me for a while. And when the crowd crush of 2022 happened, I read a lot about it. During my time at my Korean company, the topic of Itaewon had come up, and the immediate response from everyone at the lunch table, everyone Korean except for me, was to say that they deserved it, and they did it to themselves. I was speechless. I grew up in Pakistan, so I'm no stranger to this kind of mentality and this kind of victim blaming, especially of the youth and the youth that is different. Itaewon is a place where a lot of younger LGBTQ and foreign crowds hang out, and I suspect that that has something to do with the Koreans who believe that these people brought this fate onto themselves. But what surprised me most was not that it was older Koreans who said this. It was Koreans my own age who were looking me right in the eye and telling me that these people deserved what happened to them. And I know that that's not what majority of Koreans feel, but I do know that that is a popular opinion among the conservatives in the country. And I think you might be starting to understand exactly why I quit my job at that company. On my second day in Korea, I went to Nami Island. I actually ziplined into the island, which was super fun. I got to see the peacocks, ostriches, bunny rabbits, and all the beautiful nature on the island. This island was also super rich in history considering that it was named after General Nami, a prominent yet controversial figure in Korean history from the Joseon dynasty. Although he was a highly skilled and successful general, when his patron King Sejong died, he was falsely denounced as a traitor and was executed along with 25 others, including his own mother. After Nami Island, our tour group went to the Garden of Morning Calm, and during the winter, it is lit up like a beautiful Christmas light show. It was truly beautiful and probably the top 3 highlights of my trip. Another one of the top 3 highlights of my trip absolutely had to be finally having a Korean corn dog in Korea. And actually, all the food I had in Korea had to be in the top highlights of my trip. When I worked at my Korean company, my being a vegetarian was such a big point of tension for them. The fact that they had to provide vegetarian food for me, they acted like they didn't know what it was and that Koreans simply never ate anything without meat in it. That is totally not true. When I came to Korea, I was flooded with options of delicious food and all of them traditional Korean food. They have vegetarian bibimbap, vegetarian kimbap, vegetarian corn dogs, bindae is vegetarian, tteokbokki is vegetarian. I literally could not have had a better time, especially after coming from Thailand where it is much harder to find such options. After spending just about the entire day on this tour, I made a stop in Hongdae, got a tattoo because I am collecting tattoos from every country I travel to, and then I headed back to my hotel to get some good night's sleep because the next morning I was going to the highlight of my entire trip, the DMZ. Last day in Korea, I'm about to go to the DMZ, the highlight of my trip for me because I am so interested in Korean history. And yeah, I can't wait. I guess I'll talk about all of it when I get back, anything I missed out or didn't record myself speaking on. I'm still getting confident in actually holding the camera in public and talking. I haven't done that, so a lot of this is probably going to be voiceover. But yeah, this trip has been so amazing. And I'm so glad I did it and proved to myself that I can do it. So yeah, let's go to the DMZ. Our first stop was the Imjinggak Peace Park. This park was made to commemorate an ideal reunification among North and South Korea. We saw the Freedom Bridge, old trains from the Korean War riddled with bullets, and millions of prayer ribbons tied to the fence with messages of hope for reunification from families who've been torn apart. There were also the statues of 2 little girls in memory of comfort women, one for the South and one for the North. You can also purchase North Korean money here, and I did get the old and new bills with Kim Il-sung's face on it. Our next stop was the one I had been anticipating the most, the observatory. Unfortunately for us, the outdoor rooftop observatory was closed, but fortunately the skies were perfectly clear for us to still see from the second observatory through the window. They didn't take our phones away, but we were not allowed to use them. There were posters up saying that we would get 1 year in prison if we did, so I didn't really take a chance. However, our tour guide was able to take videos for us beforehand and airdrop them. Anyway, thanks to the sunny day, I can officially say that I have seen the city of Kaesong with my own eyes. The next and most laborious stop on our tour was the third tunnel of aggression. This is one of the 4 tunnels built by North Korea that South Korea has discovered right along the border of the 2 nations. This is the closest to the actual border an American can get, and you must put your phone and all other belongings into a locker before making the approximately 20-minute trip. Man, the 10-minute walk back up was a bitch. After that, we stopped at the Unification Village where I bought some delicious North Korean red bean chocolate, recommended by my tour guide. More than anything, the entire experience showed me just how deep the wound of this division ran. Being from Pakistan, a part of me understood it. But the Indian subcontinent has always been so large and so diverse that the pain of such a split is numbed by how small it seems on that scale. But for Korea, the Korean peninsula is truly homogeneous. One people, one culture, one language, one family. And so I can't help but wonder if it is this split that has sent two nations spiraling into opposite extremes. I see a people out of balance, struggling to regain their footing, and currently the UN's lowest predictions for 2060 is that the population will shrink by 30%. It could lead to extreme economic collapse with such a shrinking workforce. And as for the cultural collapse, today the generation of 25 to 45-year-olds that made K-pop, K-dramas, and K-food popular globally makes up 37% of the population. In 2060, they will only be 16%, and ages 25 to 35 will only be 5%. And what of mandatory military service? So many of the soldiers that I encountered at the border could not have been older than 20, 21. If North Korea and South Korea are still at war in 2060, what will the South Korean military look like without any youth? For a nation that pulled itself out of poverty and took the world by storm, South Korea seems to have never recovered from the urgency of survival mode. And that may just be the very thing that leads them right back to the state that they are trying so hard to outrun. But without real, actionable change to improve the lives and conditions of its people, how can South Korea expect its people to want to bring children into the world? So while people fret over North Korean dictatorship, they may be missing the fact that South Korea isn't actually doing all that much better either. And maybe now, facing the music is the only option this great nation really has left to allow it and its people to continue to flourish so that the art, music, fashion, food, and culture that got the entire world to fall in love with it can live on and evolve to even greater heights.